Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining this webinar. For awareness, this is being recorded, as you just heard, so that anyone who can't make it will be able to watch the video later. Following the webinar, we will post the video to our research webpage in case you want to refer back to it, as well as the slides from the presentation. My name is Molly Cain, and I'm the Associate Director for Research for Alaska Sea Grant. Today, I'm going to be providing information about the request for proposals that we released a few weeks ago for research projects to be conducted primarily in calendar years 2026 and 2027. So the goal of this webinar is to provide information to those interested in submitting proposals for this opportunity. I'm going to run through some slides to give you an overview of Alaska Sea Grant and what we do, and then we'll discuss what we're looking for in proposals submitted to this RFP and go over the application process and components. I'll primarily be going over information that is already outlined in our RFP document. If you haven't downloaded it already, the detailed RFP is posted on our website under research and then funding. And I think Brooke is also going to be putting that link to our funding page in the chat. There will also be time at the end for questions. And if you have any questions after the webinar, you're welcome to reach out to me at any time. So first, a little background on what Sea Grant is. Sea Grant is a federal university partnership program between the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and university-based programs located in every coastal and Great Lakes state in the country. So Alaska Sea Grant is part of a national Sea Grant program, which consists of this network of 34 university-based state programs, each with a mission to enhance the sustainable use and conservation of coastal, marine, and watershed resources. The National Sea Grant Program is over 50 years old and early on focused on fisheries-related research. But over the years, the portfolio has broadened and diversified. And you'll see that at Alaska Sea Grant, we have a wide range of topics that we're interested in supporting that all fall under this larger umbrella of enhancing the sustainable use of coastal, marine, and watershed resources. At Alaska Sea Grant, like other Sea Grant programs, we address this mission using a three-pronged approach of extension, education, and research. So we have our Marine Advisory Program, or MAP agents and specialists who are located in communities around the state conducting extension and education research or outreach. And then we also competitively fund research projects through our RFPs and support students involved in those projects, as well as early career professionals participating in our science and policy fellowship programs. So we're based at the University of Alaska Fairbanks and have faculty and staff in particular locations around the state, but our role and mission is really statewide. A couple great resources to learn more about our program, especially if you're less familiar with Alaska Sea Grant, include our annual report, which highlights some of our more recent work, as well as our strategic plan, which we update every few years and is focused on our vision and values as an organization. I encourage you to take a look at these documents to get a sense of what we do and our priorities in order to help guide your proposal and ensure that it has a strong connection to the mission and values of Sea Grant. One thing detailed in our strategic plan are our 4 focus areas. All the work that we do, including the research projects that we fund, must fit under at least one of these themes. These include healthy coastal ecosystems, sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, resilient communities and economies, and environmental literacy and workforce development. So there's a large variety of topic areas that can be addressed, but ultimately must relate back to one of these focus areas. So overall, we're really interested in projects that ultimately relate to coastal and marine ecosystems and resources and their upstream watersheds, as well as the communities that they affect. Another thing to mention is that while we are looking for topically diverse projects, there are additional incentives for us internally to fund projects related to mariculture. The reason for this is because the National Sea Grant Program will provide extra funds to help cover aquaculture projects. This is because the funding is allocated by Congress, and Congress is really interested in that topic. So we've put aside money specifically for that. That being said, we are looking for a diversity of projects that ideally cover all of these focus areas and do not plan for aquaculture to dominate our portfolio. This incentive has existed for our past competitions, and historically only a couple projects we funded have qualified for those additional funds. As outlined in our strategic plan are our organization's cross-cutting principles. These are concepts that provide a foundation across all the work we do. The first is that we will cultivate and sustain partnerships by integrating the expertise and capabilities of partners from communities, local, tribal, state, federal, and international governments, as well as from academia, non-governmental organizations, and industry. The second is that we will enhance diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and accessibility by seeking and integrating diverse perspectives to advance cultural understanding and enable Alaska Sea Grant to pursue its vision and mission with and for all audiences. So these cross-cutting principles are at the core of what we aim to do and are relevant to this RFP, particularly for the engagement component, which I'll talk about in more detail later. So thinking about that niche that Alaska Sea Grant fills as a program in the funding realm, we're really looking for projects addressing an emerging issue or problem affecting Alaskans. This includes information to move an issue forward, how can research help address a problem, and how can we disseminate those results to have a beneficial impact. So we're looking for projects where partnerships with communities and other relevant groups are key. There should be significant engagement, including collaborative research and outreach components. We very much support also having those partners involved as early as possible in the project so that there's meaningful and equitable collaboration and that questions are also driven by their interests. So let's get into the logistics of the RFP. As I mentioned, Sea Grant is a federal university partnership. So we operate through a university-based network and receive funding from NOAA with funds for research allocated in 2-year cycles. For that reason, we hold this funding competition biennially and fund research projects that are 2 years in duration. So right now we're looking for proposals for research projects that will begin February 1st, 2026 at the earliest. You might notice that there's a pretty long lead time between when you apply and when these projects would start. We would like to condense that, but that is largely because of the lengthy process we follow that is set by the National Sea Grant Program. Project budgets are on the order of about $100,000 in federal funding. Some are smaller and some are bigger, but that is just about the average we receive. One thing to keep in mind that is unique about our projects is that they also include funds to support a graduate student working on the project. Graduate student involvement and training is really another one of these hallmarks of Sea Grant funded research. So 2 years of graduate student support is provided in addition to the project budget for each funded project. And these funds are outside of or not included in that budget that you'll submit. So that average proposal budget you see here does not reflect those additional funds for the grad student support. So while the budgets for projects we fund aren't huge compared to some funding organizations, once you factor in the costs of 2 years of student support, it makes it a much more significant award. And the grad student support we provide includes a yearly stipend, including summer salary, 12 to 18 credits of tuition and fees annually, and health insurance costs. So pretty much we cover as much as we can. And the funded student must be at a university within the state of Alaska. Another aspect of our projects to note is that we require cost share of 50%. Federal law requires a non-federal match of 50% or $1 of non-federal funding for every $2 of federal funds awarded for all state Sea Grant programs, and that includes our research projects. Cost share can be in kind or actual contributions. In kind means that you contribute something that you have that has some value. A common thing that can be used as cost share are salaries coming from non-federal funds for time put towards the project. Some examples of in-kind contributions could be samples to be processed, equipment that can be billed to complete the work, boat use of partner facilities, volunteer time, waived field site lodging fees, so things that can be quantified. The match funding can also be actual contributions. Some past examples of this are funds provided by a private industry contributing to the project. So when you factor in cost share, the total budget for the projects on average is on the order of $150,000. If cost share is an issue for you or your organization, then please reach out because we don't want this to be a hurdle for folks applying. we can put our heads together and perhaps come up with some creative solutions. And we anticipate that approximately $1 million in funding will be available for projects and graduate student support. So that means if you do the math, we anticipate funding about 5 projects depending on the budgets. Here's the timeline that is in the RFP. We released the RFP in November. Pre-proposals will be due by February 5th at 5 p.m. Alaska time. Those will then be reviewed by a pre-proposal panel. Reviews will be shared around March 21st. We will encourage a subset of those who rate highly in the evaluation criteria to submit full proposals, and full proposals can only be submitted by those who have submitted pre-proposals. And then those full proposals will be due May 15th. The full proposals will undergo peer and panel review in the summer. And then in the fall, we will be recommending projects to the National Sea Grant Program. The way the funding comes to us is that we put these proposals together into a larger proposal that we submit to National Sea Grant for approval. And then those funds will come to us the following year, which once again is why there's such a long lead time here. So the earliest start date is February 1st, 2026, and the latest end date is January 31st, 2028. We recognize that February 1st is an awkward time to start relative to the academic year. We do have a bit of wiggle room on when we can start graduate students, since those funds are separate from the project budgets. So grad students can potentially start at the beginning of the semester. We can also start them in May or the following fall at the latest. In terms of investigator eligibility, PIs must be affiliated with an Alaska-based university, 2- or 4-year college, museum, research lab, nonprofit organization, or tribal entity. And then co-PIs may be affiliated with any of those Alaska institutions, as well as research or education institutions outside of Alaska, state and federal agencies, and for-profit and foreign organizations. Individuals from federal agencies or for-profit and foreign organizations cannot request salary or travel support. Also, at least one of the PIs or co-PIs needs to have academic status and authority in order to supervise the grad student if one is planned for the project. To submit your proposals, you'll use a portal called eSeaGrant, which is both our application submission system as well as our reporting system. The link for eSeaGrant is in the RFP and on our funding webpage. The Research RFP application portal is open now, so you can start inputting your proposal information at any time. If you happen to encounter any issues in eSeaGrant, please let me know. Please also note that PIs need to be the ones who start an application. This is because whoever starts the application automatically gets assigned as the PI in eSeaGrant. Even though there's some other places for you to input that information. But then once you start the application, you can add collaborators or proposal coordinators, if you so wish, who will also be able to access that application. This is what the initial eSeaGrant login screen looks like. If you haven't used eSeaGrant before, you'll create a PI account by clicking on the register button. Only PIs need to create an account, co-PIs do not. If you have submitted proposals to us before, please make sure to log in with the account you created previously rather than creating a new one. If you forget, your username is your email address, and you can click the Forgot Password button to recover it. And then once you log into eSeaGrant, you'll see a list of all our current applications that are open. We also have several fellowship opportunities open right now, but for this RFP, you want to add the one at the top, Alaska Sea Grant Funding Opportunity 2026 to 28 fee proposal. For the pre-proposal elements, you'll find that some information gets filled out directly in eSeaGrant and other information is uploaded in documents. You'll directly fill out the project title and investigator information. The next form includes 2 links to voluntary demographics questionnaires, one for the PI to fill out if they so choose, and then the other link is for co-PIs that we ask the PI to send to your co-PIs to fill out themselves if they so choose. This is because they may not have access to the application at eSeaGrant, so these are Google Forms. You'll input keywords and identify a primary focus area for the project from one of the 4 focus areas mentioned earlier, as well as a major topical area from a provided list. You'll indicate the type of grad student support your project will include, whether that's a master's or PhD student. We also ask for names and contact information for 5 potential reviewers. Please do not suggest any individuals you might have conflicts of interest with. These would be folks you have written papers or proposals with in the last 48 months, past students, past advisors, etc. This also includes anyone at your institution. In terms of items you should be prepared to upload at the pre-proposal stage, you'll also be asked for CVs for PIs and co-PIs. For the pre-proposal project document, we're just looking for a single PDF that includes the project narrative of up to 2 pages, an engagement plan of up to 1 page, and the results of any past Alaska Sea Grant support. If you haven't received any past Alaska Sea Grant support, you just need to use that page to say, I haven't received any Sea Grant support in the past. And then the RFP outlines what we're looking for in detail for the project narrative and engagement plans. So you note that there is no need for budget information in the pre-proposal. However, in designing your project, you want to keep the scope of the budget in mind, as this will be required at the full proposal stage. So I would recommend still sketching out a budget for yourself. However, you don't submit the budget to us at this stage. The full proposal has many of the same requirements as the pre-proposal, and these will carry over in the application portal. But you can also edit those if they need to be updated. And then you'll also be asked for some additional elements. These include a project summary that is broken down into objectives, methods, and rationale. These are relatively short, with each limited to 2,000 characters. We'll be looking for a project narrative of 12 pages max. That includes all figures and tables, but does not include references. Once again, in the RFP, we go into detail about the individual pieces we're looking for that project narrative. We once again ask for an engagement plan, which will be uploaded separately from the project narrative and has a 2-page limit at the full proposal stage. You will also be required to submit a Sea Grant 90-4 budget spreadsheet, as well as a detailed budget narrative. I'd recommend filling out your institutional budget spreadsheet if you have one. So if you're at UAF, then the UAF iBud, before then transferring that information over into the 90-4. That will also help you to create the budget narrative, which needs to be pretty detailed, which you'll see if you refer to the NOAA Grants Management Division budget narrative guidance that's linked in the RFP. And then once again, the cost share of 50% per year will need to be documented in your budget. And the graduate students involved should not be included in that budget. Also, a new element I wanted to highlight that we're requiring in this year's RFP is that project budgets should include travel support for the PI and the graduate fellow to attend an in-person Alaska Sea Grant all-hands meeting in the first year of the project. We're really excited to have researchers join this meeting and provide an opportunity to increase engagement across the broader Alaska Sea Grant program. Continuing with our list here, PIs are required to upload a current and pending support document. You're also encouraged to upload letters of collaboration. These would be relevant letters from partners detailing support for and the benefits of the proposed research collaboration. All Sea Grant projects are required to have a data management and sharing plan. This has a 2-page limit. A link to a data management plan template that you have the option to use is in the RFP. Key here is that all environmental data collected under Sea Grant awards must be made publicly accessible in an archive. And then finally, Sea Grant programs are also required to go through a NEPA review process for all research projects. So you are required to fill out an environmental compliance questionnaire. For any projects that are funded, we will also need to have copies of any required permits before we can administer the funds. So there is a place in Sea Grant to upload those permits if you have them at the time of submission. We also realize that you may not have those in hand quite yet. So I wanted to come back to this engagement piece for a moment, since this is a somewhat unique aspect of Sea Grant funded research, and particularly to highlight an update to the engagement plan in this year's RFP. So proposals should be scientifically strong, but the most competitive proposals will also have meaningful and equitable collaboration with communities, industries, agencies, or other relevant groups. So really, this is about partnerships. So the engagement plan should identify partners and describe their involvement in and benefit from the project. This is described in the RFP, and then we also have an engagement webpage with some resources that may be helpful. To help folks think through their plans for engagement, particularly using best practices in engagement and putting those best practices into context. Something new that we added this year is that within your engagement plans, we're asking applicants to describe how the project addresses what are called the 4 Rs. These are best practices for research engagement that were described by Harris and Wazalewski. These are important to consider when working with any partners, but are especially important when working with Indigenous communities and communities in rural and underserved regions. The first guiding principle is that research is conducted in relationship. This value incorporates aspects like fostering trust and open communication with our partners through the research process, providing them the opportunity to help define research objectives, and conducting research in a way that is respectful and recognizes the unique context, values, and perspectives of those involved. Next is that research is conducted responsibly. This means upholding high ethical standards, including considering potential impacts on communities and taking steps to mitigate any harm. Also recognizing one's positionality and how our identity and viewpoints influence our research and engagement. Next, research is conducted in reciprocity. This value involves investing in communities and partners in tangible ways, and recognizing that our partners invest in the research. So this incorporates things like conducting education outreach, as well as acknowledging the input, knowledge, and perspectives of our partners. And then last, research is conducted with redistribution. So this means ensuring that communities and partners mutually benefit from the research, whether financially through an equitably distributed project budget or through other means. This idea also includes outcomes of the research being shared and contributing to the well-being of those involved. So these are values you'll want to consider as you make your plans for engagement. If you need assistance with making connections, Alaska Sea Grant may be able to help. We have faculty and staff specializing in outreach, communication, and education that can be resources for things like developing outreach and education products, coordinating meetings and workshops, developing websites. We have Marine Advisory Program agents located in different regions of Alaska. They can provide expertise on the local communities and emerging issues in the region. Some also have more topical expertise. We also have folks who may not be based in a particular location shown here, but work in regions beyond what's here. So can still potentially help make connections with local organizations. There are also likely folks on this call who are working in communities and not affiliated with academic institutions. So on the flip side, if you are looking for academic partners to work with, we may also be able to help with that. Because of graduate student training and involvement being such a keystone of our research projects, partnering with someone from academic institutions tends to make for a strong proposal. And then for any Alaska Sea Grant folks that have a lot of involvement in a project, they can be included as non-funded collaborators. And then finally, in terms of how the proposals will be reviewed, we convene review panels for both the pre-proposal and full proposal stages, and each proposal is evaluated by at least 3 reviewers, all of whom declare no conflict of interest. The criteria for the pre-proposals and full proposals are a bit different. The pre-proposal doesn't have a budget, so that's not considered at that stage, and the relevance of the project is more heavily weighted in the pre-proposal, although it's still important in the full proposal. The criteria involves aspects like the degree to which the project addresses a pressing issue in Alaska. Scientific merit is also evaluated. We will have both scientific experts as well as non-experts on the review panels. So that scientific merit needs to make sense to both of those audiences. There is an engagement criteria. Are partners involved and will they benefit from the project? And then applicant qualifications are also considered in terms of the project budget for the full proposal. we're looking at, is the proposed budget reasonable for the project and is it equitably distributed? We want to make sure the budget is neither underestimated or overestimated. And all of these criteria are described in greater detail in the RFP itself as well. So that is the end of the presentation portion, and we can open it up for questions. Feel free to unmute yourself to ask or put questions in the chat, whichever you prefer, and then I will get the chat up on my computer. Quiet bunch.
You've got hi Molly, this is Gay. You've got some notes going on in the chat.
Oh, excellent, thank you. Regarding eligibility for nonprofits, must they be a 501c3 or will other types of nonprofits be eligible? So I don't know the details of a 501c3, but nonprofits are eligible to be are eligible. So I would say yes. Yeah, as long as you're not in the list of those not eligible for-profit institutions, or well, if we're talking about COPIs here, then yes, nonprofits are eligible.
Hi Molly, this is Gay.
Okay.
I'm just going to put for the group, thank you very much for your presentation and this opportunity. I'm going to put in the group chat here, if people are interested more in the Marine Advisory Program agents, I'm the agent for Nome and the Bering Strait region. So if that helps, Marine Advisory Program agents are place-based. So we live in the hub community for a region. So in Western Alaska, we have myself in the Bering Strait and Tavamu in Dillingham, Bristol Bay Borough. There's Kodiak, Julie Matwayu, and where's our other map agent?
Petersburg.
Petersburg, thank you. Sunny Rice in Petersburg, and of course, Gabe Dunham in Juneau. So those people who are in that position, they are place-based. They live and work. I live and work in this regional rural hub of Nome. So there's a little bit more information for that. And if you do have questions or you want to work in an area through this program and you have that opportunity to talk to Molly, the Alaska Sea Grant people, but also to people that are place-based in rural Alaska. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Gay. Our Alaska Sea Grant Marine Advisory Program agents are a great resource, and can really help to make connections and get kind of the lay of the land in those areas. And then also, like I mentioned, we have some folks who work outside of where their little dot was on the map. David Holen's one that comes to mind that does a lot of work in a lot of rural communities across Alaska. Yeah, thanks for that, Gay. And I see another question in the chat. Can you be a PI if you are not affiliated to an Alaska institution, but are collaborating with an Alaska institution? So to be the PI, you have to be affiliated with an Alaska institution. However, folks, pretty much anyone can be a co-PI. So those who are not affiliated with an Alaska institution can be included on projects as co-PIs. Yeah, and just, well, folks are maybe thinking of other questions going back to what Gay mentioned. So you can, I think that's our directory. Oh no, I can stick our directory in the chat as well. Loading. So this directory also has contact information for Alaska Sea Grant folks, including the Marine Advisory Program. And so you can feel free to reach out to folks directly, or if you aren't sure who to connect with, you know, for example, developing educational products or something, then you can contact me first. I can make sure to connect you with the right person.
Molly, I'll just chime in to add that it's definitely a good resource to just browse our website, including the news stories that we publish there, because every 2 months or so, we'll run a story describing one of the research projects we have funded. And more often than not, it's from the perspective of the graduate student who's involved. But that can give you a kind of a deeper look into some of the projects.
Yeah, and you can kind of get a feel for, you know, the types of projects that kind of have these hallmarks of Sea Grant funded projects. Those are a great resource. Thanks, Brooke. Yeah, Brooke leads our communications team, which puts out some really, really great products on the work that's being done. Oh, another question, Ryan. If you had to guess, how many applications have you received on average in the past for previous RFPs? So typically, well, I've been around for one previous cycle, and we received about 20 pre-proposals. And then about half of those were invited or encouraged to submit full proposals. And this has varied year to year. Actually, I would say the last RFP we ran, the numbers were a little lower than usual. All right. Well, hearing no further questions, I'll wrap it up. Thank you all for joining. And of course, if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My email was on that last slide, but it's also very easy to find me online and find my phone number. All right. Have a great rest of your day, guys.